Hey guys, welcome to the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast. I'm your host, Rob Fuller. Seem to be a little uncentered here. Sorry, I'm trying to fix myself as we start. Jonathan is gone today, so I have a special guest with me, Mr. Kyler Collom.
It's me. You're not Jonathan.
No, I'm not Jonathan.
Something's weird here.
Jonathan, where is he?
I know. He's gone. He's
traveling.
he's on a trip doing big things.
So we thought we'd give you guys a treat today where Kyler and I kind of battle on things because we've called each other out a number of times over the different podcasts on, some food stuff, some the Doge thing, whatever else we've talked about through those things.
It's finally good to get together on this. And,
absolutely.
I appreciate the invite. I look forward
I look forward to
seeing where this will go.
Yep, absolutely. So what do you want to start with? You want to start federally, locally? What do you want to do?
Start nationally, kind of that big news that everyone's waking up to this Thursday morning with that big plane crash out in D.C.
Pretty unreal. Like, a plane coming into land hits a helicopter.
Yeah.
That, the little bit that I've heard about it this morning, awfully sad, awfully tragic, but they said, preventable. Shouldn't have ever happened.
No. And it sounded like air traffic control was trying to adjust traffic, but I'm not sure if they just never ended up getting that through, or if someone didn't comply, or if they didn't do it to the right degree.
Yeah, it sounded like just lack of communication. They weren't getting the information quick enough to them, or they weren't passing it on to the helicopter or the plane as needed. So, pretty sad. I did hear, though, has it been 15 years since the last major?
Yeah, last major crash was like 2009, and I saw this is probably going to end up being like the largest total loss of life since that big plane crash in like November of 2001.
Okay.
I know there was a big, somewhere in some big field, but not related to 9/11. That was a couple months later.
Awfully tragic. Yeah, awfully tragic. I mean, it's too bad those things have to happen.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but speaking of Washington, D.C.
Yes, there's lots happening.
There has been. It's been a busy couple weeks here all of a sudden. It has. You want to start with some of the deportation numbers that have been going around?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's fantastic. The deportation thing, they've been rounding up mostly criminals, illegal immigrants that are criminals, and they've been deporting them. I thought the whole thing last weekend with Colombia and that president, Trump's like, okay, you guys don't want him back. Okay, fine. We're going to go ahead and put tariffs on everything you send here. We're going to hold the bank accounts of all your national officials. We're going to go ahead and revoke all their, their ability to come into the country, travel to diplomatic status. Thank you. The diplomatic status. We're going to, and then within 2 hours, they're like, you know what? We're bad.
Maybe we'll send our plane to come get them.
We'll send our plane up to come get them. So, and now I heard this week too, did you hear about the Guantanamo?
Yeah, that's a crazy situation. The reopen, it's not obviously, so it's a whole base. It's a massive facility down there. It's not just like a detention, and jail center for people. They have massive facilities there where they're able to house up to 30,000 people, I guess. Yeah,
should we call them guests?
Whatever you want to determine the word as for them. But it's some. I know it's been utilized at least during the Clinton and Bush eras for sure.
Well, obviously we used to put terrorists in there. Yeah, that was part of the whole thing with the war on terror. But people are going to complain about this. But honestly, if you have up to 30,000 people that we're going to deport that are criminals. Yeah. And their countries are saying, hey, we're not going to take them back. Where should we put them? Exactly. What should we do with them?
And what are maybe it'll happen, but what are the odds it actually gets to 30,000 people in there at one time?
I don't think it'll be that. Again, Trump is just such a master of negotiation, right? Sure. And whether you want to call it negotiation or whatever, anytime he doesn't see things going the way that he wants them to go for the United States, he throws out the tariffs or whatever else, and boy, people capitulate right away.
They do. They follow it. They fall in line to the American tariff system.
Well, they all want our money.
Oh, and that's the thing. They want our business. We are still the biggest economy in the world. We are still the most consumer-friendly economy in the world. It's all driven by consumer goods.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, there's a lot of things that come in and out, but for Colombia, I would guess their main import product is probably coffee.
Good chance.
I'm sure coffee comes from other places as well. So they would lose, I'm sure, a ton of business and a ton of revenue. Mm-hmm. And so, hey, we'll just take our criminals back and put them back in our prison and keep getting money.
That's their highest legal export, at least.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I was going to say the other one, but I don't think we need to go there. Now, on top of that, did you see during that whole thing? Sorry, I just lost.
Did you know Pete Hegseth was stationed at Guantanamo Bay for a couple years in like 04 and 05? I was reading an article on that. Yeah, on Fox News. Yeah, he was stationed there for a time, like 20 years ago. And
well, that makes sense. What did you think about the Department of Defense pulling a lot of these people's credentials, security clearance, and their security details?
No issue with them pulling the security clearance at all.
No.
The details is maybe a little questionable in a couple instances, but like for the most part, you don't need it anymore.
Well, I mean, the security details. Why would we have to pay for a security detail as the American public for Fauci?
Yeah,
was he
exactly like or, someone like him doesn't need it.
Or General Milley.
Yeah, you don't want to see those guys have it, and it's
I mean, it doesn't make any sense, at least in my mind. Why did they need protection? Did they do something wrong?
Exactly, and on top of that, if they think they have the need for protection, I feel like they've both had successful enough careers where they should have no problem employing it themselves.
They got money enough to go ahead and pay for it. You guys want security? Do what Hollywood does. So, how about Bob Menendez? Yeah, being sentenced to 11 years.
That was crazy. I wasn't sure if anything would actually come of that.
Well, it's been going on for what, 5 years? 6 years?
I think the raid initially happened like 5 years ago. So he got indicted like 2 or 3 years ago.
It makes you wonder if anything actually ever will happen, right? I mean, maybe Joe Biden will jump in and give him a presidential pardon or something.
Post.
Well, no, he's been convicted now.
Exactly. So, what a post-presidential pardon? What will that be? Just Joe giving him a thumbs up?
Joe just doing Joe things, I think.
But it was crazy, the situation. He was bribed by Egypt over a number of years to just, from what they could prove, write letters on their behalf to get to lobby people to come to the country, and doing it anonymously, effectively, but they were still paying him for it.
And he made millions of dollars, right? Millions of dollars.
Yeah, and he had incredible connections because he was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Yeah. So that massive influence overseas with that.
Again, I mean, anytime you're peddling influence, I don't care if it's a senator, as a president's kid, as somebody in the cabinet, we got to put a stop to this as a country. We really do. And I think this is a good first step. Do you ever want to see anybody go to prison? Well, not unless they're bad people. But, if this guy is going to sell influence and he cares more about his own pocketbook than the American public.
Yep. And you make it this blatant that you're going to get caught. Yeah.
Have fun in jail.
Exactly.
So.
Gold bar Bob.
Yeah, gold bar Bob. There you go. Now, you and I have been talking about this. Let's go on to Doge.
Yeah. I think core concepts, we agree on what we want to see from it.
Do you think, have you seen, I heard you and Jonathan talking on your podcast now. One of the things is the implementation actually going to be there, and are they going to start cutting money, right? There is a guy on TikTok, I had put that on our notes so you and I could talk about it. He's called the Doge Update Guy. So if you want to follow him, go to TikTok and go to Doge Update Guy. He literally every day will tell you from the day before what programs Doge cut, what they were about, and how much they were costing us. And I mean, there's some great ones in there, you guys. Did you know the United States studied squirrels? We studied the squirrel population in this country. I think that if I'm not, $2.3 million annually is what we spent to
do an annual squirrel
study on how many squirrels there are in
what
this
kind
country.
Of squirrels?
Absolutely.
Is it just any kind of squirrel?
I didn't dig into it. I mean, if you want to take some time and dig
like
into
the gray squirrels versus the brown squirrels?
But when you're hearing this guy talk about some of these programs, and then you're like, that's real? Like, we were spending money? It makes zero sense.
No, and there's a plethora of things like that, too. You don't just look at a lot of the domestic stuff where they throw money at about anything that sticks. You look at the excessive stuff that they send overseas.
Yeah.
Did you see what they were going to send, what was it, $50 million to Gaza for?
Yeah, condoms.
Yeah. That's a great...
Now, did you see, and I think it came out Tuesday, Musk's next big push to cut spending within the government?
What's that?
Get rid of health benefits for Congress and make them pay for their own benefits just like the American public has to.
There you go.
What was the number? I want to say it was like 3 billion, somewhere between 3 billion and I don't know,
some
like
exorbitant
billion.
number.
I mean, it's a huge number for what we pay for health benefits for these members of Congress. But you and I have to go out there and buy our own high-priced insurance, right?
Because we're no longer just paying for the active members of Congress. If they
everybody,
as soon as they get reelected, they get the ability to have all their benefits retroactively, and they get their pension, and we pay for all of that. And
absolutely.
There's thousands of them at this point.
Well, and there is. I mean, and again, it's a lifetime thing. It is. It's a lifetime thing. So I think
Unless you're Bob Menendez.
Well, minus Menendez. I don't think, but he'll get it in prison.
Yeah, because he's in prison. Insurance in prison. He gets the prison version of it.
You know, it's amazing. I think as the general public, the things that we hear and see all of a sudden that we've never heard and seen before, like, you're really wasting our money on this kind of stuff. You know, like, you guys do better. Yep. You owe us better. You know,
and it starts adding up. Obviously, when you're overspending your budget by like $1 trillion, it's hard to comprehend that much money. But when you start seeing little things like that all over the place, they add up fast. Yeah. And
I think yesterday, TikTok guy, Doge update TikTok guy said they saved like $160 million, which doesn't seem like a lot of money, right, in the general scheme of things. But if you do $160 million a day or whatever it is, and then you get a couple of the bigger ones in there, hopefully they get close to that $1 trillion that he wants to.
And that's the thing, especially when it's little line items like this. And it's not just, you know, we're trying to remove the Department of Education, which is a whole different conversation on that. But
I think we could remove 3 or 4 different departments, quite honestly.
I'm not disagreeing on that. But when you say something like that, that creates a whole different optics image of public perception. You see something like that getting taken away and people go up in arms about it.
Oh, absolutely.
For better or for worse. But that's the kind of thing you see when you get to that level. When you're doing just individual line items like this, it's a lot easier to get by with a lot more things.
Well, it is. And I mean, you know, we did a little bit of that this year at the city, going through the budget. And so, I mean, it takes time, you know, and I can't imagine how much time it takes in the federal world versus what we were doing in the city world, because that took a lot of time on our parts.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah, I think it's great. You know, I will still stand on the fact that I think that they're going to do more than we give them credit for. Will they do all that they wanted to do? I doubt it.
No one ever does.
I mean, there's going to be all these wrenches that everybody throws in there, right? Lawsuits here, lawsuits there, that's going to slow everything down. So
it's the inevitability of the American political system.
Well, and maybe that's why we need to get rid of politics as a whole.
Oh, you know? Gosh, you're reminding me of my anarcho-capitalism days.
Well, now have you been watching any of the... Have you been watching any of the Senate confirmation hearings for his cabinet?
Yeah, it's a mess, isn't it?
Oh, gosh, dude. You know, I was sick yesterday, like I'd said, and I watched a little bit.
Did you watch RFKs?
I watched a little bit of RFKs while I was, you know, laying there trying to rest.
Good luck resting.
Some of the questions, some of the things that they say, like, if you, and I don't care, I'm not picking on one side or the other. It was mainly from one side, though.
If you look 4 years ago, it was then that's the disappointing thing.
Yep, it's the same.
Yeah,
but don't go in there. I mean, it's embarrassing.
At least go in with an open mind.
Well, no, even if you're opposed to the person, right? Even if you're opposed to the person, don't go in there and just start spouting off all these things that are half-truths or
misleading. Yeah, or try to lead them down a direction where they maybe shouldn't go.
And I thought RFK did a good job. But I mean, that's through all these confirmation hearings, that's all you've been hearing from the one side. And 4 years ago, like you said, that's all you were hearing from the other side. We can do better.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we can do better.
That's the thing. It's disappointing to have to watch and listen to those things.
It is.
Because you just see the dichotomy of it. You see one side almost effectively coddling them, and then the other side berating them over literally anything they can find.
I will say this, though, and you're absolutely right, but I will say this.
On the most contentious ones, at least.
20, 30 years ago, they just elected everybody that the president wanted and put on the cabinet. Now, at least there's some questions asked on both sides, and I feel... you know, some of the Democrats are asking good questions.
Oh, 100%.
Some of them are just up there to prove points, like the lady from Hawaii and a couple of the others, right? Sure. I mean, those guys are embarrassing to this country. They're embarrassing to their states. And if the people there don't quit electing them, I guess I got nothing for you. You know,
that's fair.
I
know Elizabeth Warren had a fun little her side of it too.
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, they all get up there and grandstand. Yep. What's the guy's name from Vermont that said he served in Vietnam?
Oh, not Sanders, not Phil Scott's the governor.
No,
the other
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal. There you go. Yep.
You know, that guy. I can't even stand listening to him when he's on TV. Like it's just like mute or turn the channel or whatever it is. Some of them are so embarrassing, and and there's a couple on the Republican side like that as well.
Undoubtedly,
not quite, I would say, as goofy, but I mean, you look at like the presidential retreat thing that happened last week too, right? All the House Republicans went to Mar-a-Lago
in Florida,
except for 5 of them. From the Freedom Caucus.
Okay, so like Thomas Massey. And
the what's his name from Texas? There was
Dan 4. Crenshaw.
Okay. Not gosh, I'll think of his name here in a second. Anyway,
regardless,
the 4 or 5 members from the Freedom Caucus who are opposed to some of the things. They're like, we're not going to this. Now, I get that you want to be a little bit hardline and you want to do some of this stuff. But don't stop the machine. We have had it so bad for the last 4 years, 5 years even.
6,
since this whole COVID thing kind of started. But we have had it so bad in this country. They have not taken care of the general public. They have not taken care of our economy. They have not taken care of small businesses. Don't be a wrench in the cog, right? Help. I understand you're not going to agree with everything, but go to the meeting, get on board, and let's do this.
And if it doesn't work in 2 years, guess what?
Yep, you'll all be out anyway.
Exactly. So that's where it goes. Like, I feel like you're right. You got to at least give it a chance. You got to give the agenda a shot, and if it doesn't work, 2 years, you'll be able to get the House back. Possibly the Senate will be hard, but the House, and then 4 years from now, who knows what could happen? Well, if it goes worst case for them, but I don't think it will.
You got. In this last election, a mandate from the American public, right? And I understand these guys are going to vote and do what they feel is best, like for their constituents and in their mind.
Something that hadn't been seen since 2012, really.
Right, absolutely. But we, as a whole country, we know that they were given a mandate. Get in line and help us. Don't be the fighting guys on our team. We don't need that right now. We need unity. And I'm not saying for everything, right? I'm not saying just rubber stamp everything or anything like that. But be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And
don't be a yes man, but also don't hamper like you said, don't be the cog in the machine that stops it from happening.
Well, that's just it. I mean, I don't care what it is. Lisa Murkowski and Collins and some of them that voted no against like Hegseth and everything. Okay, so what? You knew you had the votes, so you voted no anyway. What does that say about you? That you have been like that for the last 20 years that you've been in Congress.
The real one would be if there was a 4th person that went against it. That would be the one that would have been the real.
Mitch McConnell.
That was surprising. Yeah,
it wasn't surprising because Mitch McConnell is bitter. He's mad that Trump basically booted him to the side. Thune is now in charge, and so he's going to, I don't like this guy. And
think he runs again in 26?
No, I think
I know he's alluded that he's kind of going to be done, but he hasn't officially said it yet.
And I think it's when you get into your 90s or late 80s. I don't think you're an effective leader anymore.
No, I agree.
I mean, you should have retired. If you have to retire from every other job on the planet at 65, Congress should be the same way,
and
right?
I think you can get a little leeway in there, but I mean, Trump's 78, so
maybe you do it this way: if you can't pass a driving test, you can't serve in Congress.
I think that's fair. Because but you look at Chuck Grassley's 91?
Yeah,
and I mean he's smart as a tack, but I mean at the same time you're 91.
You are. Again, I thank you for everything you did for our country.
Yeah,
you were a great leader in your day and time. But at 91, what other things do we allow 91-year-old people to do, right? And again, I'm not criticizing in any way.
Not trying to be ageist by any means. No,
some 91-year-olds are in great shape compared to others, mentally, physically, all of that.
Exactly.
So, but again, there is nothing in this country that we allow 91-year-olds to do. You can't work a job, really, unless you're maybe a Walmart greeter.
Yeah, it's and if you do, it's an extremely part-time thing. Like you're doing 15, 20 hours a week maximum.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, there's so many things that we don't allow people after a certain age to do. Why do we allow that in Congress? I mean, again, I think we can all sit here and collectively say, you lose a little bit of your sharpness. And we saw that with Biden, right? And if they can hide it with Biden, imagine what they can do with a senator.
Exactly.
Who's making the decisions?
Well, I mean, who was the congresswoman that was in the nursing home for 8 months this past fall?
Oh, yeah. Was it Maxine Waters?
No, she was from Texas. I know she was from Texas, but she announced she wasn't going to run for re-election like in January, and then she like disappeared and no one could find her. She was all unpresent for all the votes, and then come like November, December, she was in a nursing home.
And yeah, that
because she got dementia.
Who was making votes for her?
Her staff, the way it sounds.
Yeah. So I mean, how is that legal? And it's kind of the same thing, just towards the end here of Biden's term, right? Mm-hmm. And Jonathan and I talked about this a little bit. After a certain point, when we know that guy doesn't have the mental capacity to keep making these decisions, the stuff that was coming out of that administration in the last 3 weeks of his term. None of that stuff should have been allowed, right? The pardons for this people, the pardons for that, the offshore drilling thing all of that was from his cabinet and his people.
Staff, yeah.
None of it came from him.
What would it have been like? This would have just thrown a whole wrench in the entire system, but what would have been like had after the election, or even, we'll just say after the election, just for the ease of it, he steps down and lets Harris be president for the last 2 months?
Well, I think that would have been a bigger disaster than it was. I mean, with him in there, quite honestly.
Think of what she would have thrown out.
Oh, she would have tried all kinds of things. Absolutely. I mean, again, and I don't know that it would have been her making the decisions, because if you heard her talk during any of her interviews, she's really not that intelligent. And so whatever decisions or whatever she would have probably been making in the last 2 months would have been being made. It
would have been a staff and her decision. She would have been at the table, but it would have, it would have been a collective.
Again, I'm not casting stones, but we got to have better choices.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, Trump's awful. Trump isn't awful. Trump isn't awful at all, because he cares about this country. And that's why you saw the American public stand up and do what they do. Because after 4 years of everybody not caring about this country and caring about everybody else, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. They call them out. They need to be called out. Everybody does. Both sides, but it's getting bad anymore.
It is. And hopefully this is kind of that tail of the hill, and we can finally start moving off of this in the next 4 years.
I'll be honest. I hope after Trump's election for 4 years and the great things they do, I honestly hope good elections, but I hope we don't have to deal with any of this partisan politics stuff for the next 12 years. I hopefully,
to this degree, at least, yeah.
Hopefully this was a little blip in our country's history and we can be beyond this now. But, with the news media and everything the way they are.
Well, that generates clicks. It generates views.
It does.
Contentious things is what people want to talk about. They love to watch it. Also, Kay Granger, 81 from Texas.
Granger. I do remember that name now that you say that. Yeah.
She was found living at a retirement community that specializes in memory care. So. Wow. Tell me what that is.
So was she Democrat or Republican?
She's a Republican.
Okay.
Yeah.
So see, again, both sides doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like, again, let's say 70. If you're not okay with 65, let's say it's 70 years of age.
Yeah.
You're done in Congress.
Yeah. Just or at least a competency test.
Yeah.
Like make something like something.
Mental acuity.
Yes, exactly.
Spoon or fork?
Yes. Not spork.
If you can differentiate, okay, you can still lead the country.
That's all it takes, right?
Right. I know the difference between a fork and a spoon.
Yes.
So.
When you put them together, that's the confusing part.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. What else nationally has been going on? Anything?
We can kind of transition. So coming up Thursday, Friday, it looks like Doug Burgum's going to get voted on for his interior job.
Yeah, I heard on the way over here that they thought Burgum, Pam Bondi, we're both going to get votes either today or tomorrow.
Yep.
And I was listening to Kash Patel on the way over here for the FBI stuff, and that guy's intelligent, and I think he'd be a great leader.
I'm sure that one's going to go probably similar to how RFK's and Hegseth's went.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to have the Democrats that aren't happy with it because. Quite honestly, they've used our government and weaponized it against not only us as the American people, but our leaders too. And we're tired of it.
Yeah.
So
and I know if I saw Chuck Grassley speaking at it this morning, and he had a good statement, but it also led me to say what I said because you could tell that it's a 91-year-old man reading a statement that's been prepared.
And when he was talking to Patel, I'm on the way over here, he said, yes, and your soon-to-be boss, Mr. Bondi. I was like, what? You don't even know You don't even know who the other candidates are, if it's a guy or a girl, like,
or Pam Bondi's her first name, even.
But that's like the thing, like, okay, hey, you know what? My staff wrote this wrong, but you can't even catch that.
Yeah.
Because you're so old.
Yeah. That's
the problem.
That's the thing. And
anyway, though, going back to your Burgum thing. So what's, if he gets his nomination.
You think he'll have an easy vote like Rubio did and get pushed through probably easier?
Yeah, I don't think Department of the Interior, right? I mean, obviously that's oil and gas and leasing, and so he'll have some pushback there and everything. But I don't think that'll be a big fight one. I think that one's going to be pretty easy because whether you liked him or not when he was governor, what do the Democrats have or the left have to push back on him against other than oil and gas drilling?
Yeah, that's going to be it. The fact that he sued, or the state of North Dakota sued the Interior Department 4 or 5 times when he was governor. I mean, what is that even to throw at him? But that's all you got.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you don't want us to drill. You want us to be dependent on somebody else. You know, I mean, I have a hard time understanding it all. Like when you see this whole push for stop drilling versus do drill, right? Why wouldn't we, if we have the resources in our own country, and don't tell me it's about some squirrel or some bat or some bird or something else, like, right?
We to be blunt and probably a little cruel, we have killed off far better and more meaningful things in the ecosystem.
When you make a 50 square mile solar array thing out in the middle of the desert, you're telling me you didn't kill any animals' habitat?
You're not wiping off something at that point? What kind of cactuses are you ruining there?
I mean, so that's the thing. Like, so anyway, why would you not want us to be energy independent so we don't have to depend on Russia or Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or
whoever it might be in that OPEC kind of?
Why would you not want that? I
agree.
I mean, that to me, I still have, and I know some of it's politics and I know some of it's maybe commercial. Like, you talk about the big businesses and everything like that.
And who lobbyists are able to push for, get their agendas going, things that.
There's things that are good for this country and there's things that are great for this country. And for you not to want to do either one of them doesn't make any sense. So, what do you think Burgum's legacy in North Dakota is going to be?
Gosh, I don't know. I feel like he didn't do a bad job as governor. I don't think. I think he's going to be looked at as almost a Trump light in the North Dakota perspective. Okay. A big, rich businessman that came back to his home state to try to fix some things. I don't know how well he did. Well, I think one of his most notable things is his attempt to eliminate income taxes in the state. He didn't get there, of course, and he wanted to push for it, but I think that and like the Dakota Access Pipelines are going to be the things that he's probably most remembered for. Yeah,
and I mean, for the most part, I didn't agree with everything he did. I thought he was kind of a rhino in some respects, but for the most part, I think he was a pretty good governor for North Dakota, and I think, with the oil and gas leasing, the legacy fund, and all those things that were kind of implemented under his tenure, I thought he did good, and it'll be beneficial for us. So I think he'll be remembered as a good governor.
I don't think, he won't be bad by any stretch.
No.
And I know you and Jonathan, I think in your podcast last week, were talking a little bit about nuclear. I would love to see that come to the state as well.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I do too. Here's my thought. North Dakota gets 3-4 nuclear power plants. You're effectively able to power almost the entire state's electrical grid. Yeah. That way, all the oil and gas you're pumping out, maybe not all of it, of course, but the vast majority oil, gas, coal that you're getting out, you're now able to sell and make straight profit off of.
Yeah.
And the state's running independent of it on its own electrical grid almost too.
And that would be fantastic. I think
it's pie in the sky. But.
Right. You'd have to figure out, where you could put 3 or 4 what do you do? Put one in each corner, right?
Almost,
and just kind of do quadrant type thing. But
I can think of 3 easy ones.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the one, if I'm not mistaken, it was Excel that was in Minot that was exploring to the northwest of Minot out there. Past the base and everything, but to possibly put a nuclear facility out there. I think that's fantastic because quite honestly, and people can bash it all they want, there is not a better source of energy in this country, in this world, than nuclear energy.
We are so far technologically advanced and past any of the possible
3 Mile Island and all that stuff.
The only most recent ones that you see are there's Chernobyl, which was a massive human failure that led to
something. But that was in Russia.
Exactly. It was in
Soviet.
the failing part of Soviet Russia.
Yeah.
And since then, you've had Fukushima, which was a massive earthquake that destroyed a plant.
Basically.
Yeah. And it also got hit by a tsunami because they put it right on the ocean line. So, I mean, we don't have to worry about that part.
No, I don't think tsunamis or earthquakes are going to be our problem
No.
here, and again, with regards to artificial intelligence, if they're going to build these big facilities, right, for mining data for artificial intelligence that need vast amounts of energy, how else are we going to do it?
Would be a better way to power it.
Yeah, how else are we going to do it? I mean, and again, you build 2 or 3 of those in North Dakota. And then you build a couple nuclear plants in North Dakota to power all this stuff in our cities. And like you said, then all our oil and gas business can just be exported.
Then the legacy fund really grows, and then we can really just buy down a property tax.
Here's the question for you. How do you turn nuclear energy into home energy?
That's the thing. Only so much of it is like a lot of anything that obviously if you're natural gas or propane, you're going to have. That's
like
why
our furnaces, right?
Yep. So much of that. It's mostly electrical grid at that point. It's
and
going
for
for
some
your
people
lights.
that'll be fantastic, right?
Yeah. But and it's not obviously it's not 100% solution, but that could take us to a point where we're able to make the state effectively energy independent.
Yeah.
Especially with what we're pulling out via coal, natural gas, oil, with the nuclear on top.
Well,
we would have the
trifecta of energy up here.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Plus all the wind.
The quadfecta. Yeah, exactly. All the wind and the solar.
All that wind energy we're getting everything for. So what else on the state level?
Well,
I know we're going to jump into the big one here in a little bit.
Yeah, you want to talk about anything first, or you want to just
how about some of the bills going through the legislature before we jump into the property tax
discussion
and all that? Yeah. So what bills have you seen through the legislature that you either are in favor of or against?
There's a lot, but there was one that I wanted to talk to you about that we got pointed out from viewer on our show Tuesday.
Okay.
It was House Bill 1458.
Okay.
And it's a bill to create and enact a new section to whatever chapter of Century Code relating to releasing a self-spreading virus and to provide a penalty.
So basically, you can't release a chemical virus or a
biological
virus in
the
state
intentionally, and you'll be penalized for it.
You're telling me that isn't a law already?
That it's shocking that it has to become something, but it just feels it's weird that I have no disagreement with it. I think it's great, but
yeah, there's some of them that it seems so obvious to me, right? Like this isn't already an issue, or it hasn't already been addressed in our state.
Or it's not like implied or assumed somewhere. We have to actually.
Or the common sense part,
yeah, exactly.
Right? Oh, hey, if you release a virus in North Dakota, you're going to go to prison and you're going to be held accountable.
Prosecuted for it, yeah.
Huh. I don't know.
Crazy how that works, but
Jonathan and I talked briefly about it the other day too. Did you see? And I don't remember the bill number right now, but the one for sex offenders, to come off the registry early. And I know there's specific instances and cases. Like, let's say a high school kid goes to the bathroom outside, right? Mm-hmm. Whips his pants down, goes to the bathroom outside. I mean, we live in North Dakota. We've all done it. I don't care what anybody says. But hey, some mom gets offended, and now he's a sex offender. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's a common sense case. Mm-hmm. Again, where you don't have to have a law in place. You got to give the judges a little leeway, and maybe this is what that's doing, but I just don't think you have to have something written into the Century Code that a sex offender can ask to be removed from the registry early.
Yeah, like there's obviously a number of caveats to it, but just having that is not a good look.
No.
It doesn't look good optically. It allows people to push and prod at it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Another one that I've really, and just in the last couple of days, been perplexed and upset about is HCB 3003. And I'm gonna tell Connie Samuelson, she brought it to my attention. I saw it on Facebook. So if you guys aren't out there and you want to follow some of this stuff, get on the Facebook page Justice for Us. It was the old page for the Measure 4, but they've been following and looking at some of this stuff. So for those of you that aren't familiar, HCR 3003 is a bill that requires the minimum to change the state constitution to go from 50% to just over 60%, right?
Yep.
Now, the reason this is important and offensive, I think, to a lot of us, because this was on the ballot in July when we all voted, June, July, do you want it to raise the minimum to bring a grassroots measure and be able to change the Constitution from 50% to 60%? And the state of North Dakota said, no, we don't want that. 55.
I think it was closer to 60-40.
Almost 60-40, yeah, almost 60-40. And here we have legislators now ignoring what the population told them just 3 months ago, or 6 months ago, 6 months ago, and doing it on their own. It went through the House and it passed like 63-28. Now, all the North Dakota representatives did vote no on it, and I think
Minot.
Or sorry, yes, all the Minot representatives voted no on it, and I do applaud them for that. So very, very good job. But what do you think about that?
I don't like that at all. I know we talked about it on one of our earlier shows about it, and it passed the House 65-28.
Yeah,
and I'm shocked by it.
What a slap in the face to everybody in the state that went out and voted 6 months ago and said, no, we don't want it to be harder.
No.
And here they are now just frickin' ignoring everything that the population said. I mean, those are people that don't deserve to lead our state.
No, it's disappointing, frankly.
It is. And I mean, 65 of them thought it was a great idea.
Exactly.
I bet you they're all from Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, the big areas, you know.
And they don't want to see, maybe they have a plan that's about to come through that they think is going to be great that a lot of people aren't going to like. And all of a sudden, if someone wants to get this ballot on the initiative again, now it's going to take an extra 10% of voters to.
And that's exactly it. Not only to get it on the ballot, but to get it approved. You have to get a 60% minimum now, right?
Yep.
Now, here's my question with that. How, after we said no, can this come as a legislative issue 6 months later? Like, you asked us, we said no. Where is the regard for what we were talking about? Like, I want to know, and I don't know if you've gone on and looked. I did get on and look at the legislative session. Who brought the bill? Who's sponsoring and supporting it, and everything that?
I have it pulled up right now.
Yeah,
it was Representatives Wells, Bosch, Senator Hogan, Senator Haug, Representative Clemon, Representative LaFour, and Senator Myrtle.
So Haug or Hogue?
Hogue, excuse me. Hogue.
So Minot.
David Hogue from Minot. Yep.
Again, I'm going to ask David Hogue. I've seen a number of these things.
Because he hasn't voted on it yet. So.
No, because it's going to the Senate. But I'm going to ask him literally, why do you keep going against what we here in Minot have asked? Because he was against Measure 4. People in Minot wanted it, right? Not everybody, but the majority. Now, you know, here we are. We said wholly, no, we're not in support of having a 60% threshold.
Yep.
And here they are, and he's one of the guys supporting it. I mean, I'll be honest. Seeing and hearing some of the things I've seen and heard out of our legislature, I wonder where these guys are getting their common sense, because they don't have any.
It's been a little disappointing.
And they're always going to argue, oh, it's about the weed bill. It's about the legalizing
whatever
marijuana
it might
bill.
Be.
That's bull.
Yeah.
It's about, they don't want us to be able to stop the property tax thing.
If that's the case, if you're so upset about like that specifically, go and make a code up for it now then.
Absolutely.
Instead of the 900 and some bills that you've introduced before the House and the Senate, why don't you fit that in there somewhere?
Yeah.
And see if anyone can get to it in the 3-month time frame that they have to work on this stuff.
Well, and again, you know, I mean, here you have a Minot legislator, right? A senator. And I'm just going to be
the party leader of the Senate
that knows how everybody around here worked. You know, if you tell me he doesn't believe that the people here in Minot want property tax reform, but not the way that they're bringing it, and not this bill that makes it a 60% threshold, I would tell you he is just thumbing his nose at us as his district and saying, whatever, I think I know better. And it was similar to that when he talked about Measure 4 at that luncheon. You know, oh, we'd have to do this, we'd have to do that. All of that was hyperbole and just scare tactics.
Yeah.
So
without a doubt.
Anyway.
And now we're looking at possibly, it's hard to get 60% agreement on things. And
how are you ever? You'll never get our state constitution ratified to do anything at a 60% minimum.
Also, the thing I find funny is you only need 50.1% to approve it in the Senate and the House. Yeah. But then all of a sudden it takes us 60%.
Yeah. So they can do it on the easy, but we got to do it in grassroots.
Obviously, the way it passed more than 60-40. But the principle of it is still, it would only take one vote over to get this to be passed.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'll be honest, not a fan.
no, I don't like it at all.
Not a fan at all.
Nope,
not a fan of anybody that supports it. Not a fan of the bill.
Yeah, I hope it continues to. I hope the Senate strikes it down, which I have my doubts on. But I hope Governor Armstrong can find this in his repertoire to veto if he were to enact a veto.
If again,
think he'd be a kind of guy that would do a veto?
I don't know. Here's my thing, and I thought Kelly did a great job as a member of the House of Representatives for our state. I didn't like how he voted all the time, but for the most part, again, I thought he did a good job. Now I'm going to jump into the property tax cap thing here.
It's
We're going to segue.
Yeah.
So the other day, obviously, the city of Minot, as a city council, we had the city write a letter stating, hey, we're not in favor of caps, and we'll go into that in a second. And shortly thereafter, the Finance Commission for the city of Fargo, which I believe is in charge, a part of their city council that's in charge of the finance
budget part.
The budget part, said, hey, we're not about these caps either. And I forget who it was from the city of Fargo that got on the radio show. And
Dave Pepcorn.
Thank you. Pepcorn. So he got on and had his say, and then they got Kelly Armstrong on there. And, Pepcorn's comment was, hey, if you're going to cap us, why don't you cap yourselves as well?
Why doesn't the state have a cap on their...
It's a great question.
It's a fair question.
Great question, because last year, the last biennium, they increased the governor's budget by 10%, right? $2 billion.
Yeah, in the state of North Dakota, that's a lot.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
So anyway, Kelly gets on the radio and says, hey, we could do that. We could cap ourselves.
Do you want the quote? I have it here.
Yes, please.
So yeah, he was asked just to respond to Pepcorn's comment. He said, I could cap the state. I could get rid of the money for the Fargo airport, for the Red River water supply. I could get rid of the challenge grants for NDSU. I could get rid of the extra money for the homeless problem that exists. We could do that. I think Dave Pepcorn's constituents would probably have a bigger problem with that. We have to balance our budget every year. We could give social services funding back to the municipality. We could get rid of the 80% we pay for K through 12 education. I've learned a long time ago probably not to take criticism from people I wouldn't take advice from.
Okay. So first things about that, I find that whole comment offensive, right? He was threatening. Instead of saying, hey, you know what, maybe it is something we could look at because we could get rid of a lot of the wasteful spending. He says, no, we're going to take the spending that actually means something and we'll take that away from you. I thought that was very disingenuous and very confrontational. I mean, again,
towards your most populous city.
Absolutely.
Which county voted for you?
Well, but the ultimate problem, I think, in my mind is we all voted for Kelly.
Massively.
Yeah, we all voted for Kelly to be governor, thinking he would. And he gets in there, and so within his first month, he's already threatening one of the cities that don't talk back about what we want to do or we'll cut your funding.
Yeah.
That's crap.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you are, what you say. That's absolute politics and crap right there.
He's appealing to people's emotions.
He is. 100%. We're going to take away the homelessness issue. We're going to take away, maybe we take away the black-footed prairie dog study that costs us $800,000 every year to make sure, the wasteful spending.
Yeah, if we want to talk about that.
Right. You didn't hear him bring that one up, did you?
No, it was talking about Fargo.
How about
NDSU?
Yeah. How about the library, the presidential library
that's
or
being
whatever?
Built in the door.
Maybe we could cut a little bit of funding out of that. But no, you don't hear him talk about those things.
Nope.
You hear him talk about the things that are important and say, we'll take that away from you then if you don't get in line.
Exactly.
I think that is absolutely ludicrous. And I think he could be a little more classy as the governor of North Dakota. If you want to keep that job, I think he could be a little bit more classy in his responses, quite honestly.
Like, obviously, is what it is. I've asked for comment on some things, and haven't got it from his office, so it is what it is. I feel like it's him throwing a little temper tantrum.
It is.
Because he doesn't...
Don't tell us how to run our state.
Yeah.
Are you kidding us? We elected you.
Yeah, you don't like my proposal?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to cut everything then.
Yeah.
Take this.
I mean, it was really...
he gets told no. Not even gets told no. He gets suggested no.
Well, I mean, and they beat up Jason Sorensen from the city of Minot down there when he was down there for flood control, asking him questions about flood control, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, hey, you dummies in the legislature. Flood control is sales tax pennies. It has nothing to do with property tax.
Whole different ballgame.
So quit talking like, why would you do that? Again, it's partisan and it's politics, and it doesn't need to be done.
No, just straight up appealing to people's emotions.
Now, going into the caps.
A little bit.
Why are we opposed to caps in your mind?
For me, I feel like it's imposing an unnecessary restriction on a city to be able to raise its spending when necessary, which I don't advocate for, but it's a thing that comes. I think Alderman Blessum made a great point with a smaller town trying to buy, a new piece of major equipment or something that might cost, $500,000, and they can only, as you pointed out, Minot in this scenario could only raise its budget by $800,000. So let alone a little place like Glenburn.
Right. So like we collected $29 million last year in property tax, right? And we as a city council pushed property tax down for between 7 and 10% roughly for just about everybody in the city, right? We're doing our jobs that we were elected to do. We're not going to allow the city to spend uncontrolled. We're not going to allow them to continue to raise property taxes. That's what we are there for. So why do you need to come in and tell us we can cap? So at $29 million we collected, a 3% cap annually means we could raise our property tax budget $870,000 a year. Okay. To me, that does two things. Number one, if we ever want to do a big project, let's say, and we're just going to use the police department.
It's the easiest one.
Yeah, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but $50 million. How do we pay for our police department then going forward, right? Are we going to do flood control bonds? Are we going to put out bonds to do this for 30 years?
We're effectively taking a 30 to 50 year loan to build this thing.
Or now do we have to go to the state and say, hey, guess what? We want to build a new police station, but we don't have the funds to do it.
We can only
contribute
20%.
$4 million. Yeah, so we need your help. So now we have to ask the state every time we want to do something major in our city that would maybe be paid for with property tax. We have to ask them for permission, and the state will get to decide, oh, you know what? Fargo has this project, Grand Forks has this one, Minot has this police department. Well, we can only do two of them. Fargo and Grand Forks, you're going to get yours. And it's, again, going to be made decisions by the state that have no point in being in our city government, right? I understand the state serves a fairly significant role in what we decide and some of the things we do, right? We've gone to them for flood control
for sure.
and different things.
But they're going to facilitate a ton of stuff nationally towards us as well.
Absolutely. Federal grants and everything are going to run through the state. But for you to put a cap on something that is all we can use. And again, if you elect the right people, if you put the correct people in charge in your city, you're not going to have to worry about unfettered property tax.
Exactly. And I think that was one of the things that's confused me the most was a lot of the commentary that I saw out there around it was it seeming like the people that were pushing for no caps and you guys in the commission of Fargo were wanting to just increase city spending, and it was cities going out of control. And it's like, if you look at who the people are that are proposing these ideas, you would understand that that's ludicrous. I mean,
well, it isn't what we're doing.
That's not the goal, obviously, of you guys. And you're the people that have cut property taxes in the city. And it was even Alderwoman Olson, who was the only dissenting vote. She wasn't she was against caps. She wasn't against the proposal. She was just against the timing of everything.
Right.
And so there's the consensus is all there for everyone doesn't want a cap. It's just maybe a little timing, but regardless.
Well, and I thought, in sitting there discussing it that night, and I think we talked about this last week, Jonathan and I did, but when's the best place to tell them we're not for something? When it's still in committee, when they're cutting and taking parts and pieces of all these different bills to make the best bill. If they get enough pushback on the caps, do you think that's actually going to come out of committee? But if once it comes out of committee,
it's already there.
It's there, and it isn't. They're not going to cut it and take it away at that point. So and again, you can say maybe we were too early, maybe we were too late. Depends on who you talk to.
But regardless, I think this was if it didn't happen 2 weeks ago, it was going to happen this coming Tuesday.
Absolutely, and I think more cities, the more we hear about this, and more entities, municipalities, counties, whatever it may be, are going to jump on and say, hey, we don't want this. We don't want to have to ask you guys if we want to buy a fire engine or if we want to do this or if we want to do that.
It's the heavy-handedness of the state feels completely unnecessary in this instance.
It does. And again, I know they're terrified that they aren't going to do the right thing on property tax and that they're going to get it handed back to them again in 2 years. And this time it's going to pass. And look at what they're doing now. They're trying to fix these things fix, right?
Yeah.
These are Band-Aid fixes. This isn't fixing property tax. This is a Band-Aid, so you feel like you're getting something back.
You're just using buy downs, but instead of using the general fund, you're using the legacy fund.
Absolutely.
That's all it is.
Yeah. So here's another question for you. Fast forward 10 years down the road, right? They're buying us down,
Allegedly 10 years from now, primary residence property taxes will be ended.
Yep. You won't, if your bill was $10,000 in property tax, you won't have any more property tax in 10 years, right? So, allegedly. But now here, let's fast forward. We've gotten that in place. It's 5 years beyond that. And all of a sudden, oil revenue dries up in the state. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's 2036 and a very progressive someone got elected.
Oil revenue's gone in the state. We're not, you know what? We can't afford to do these buy downs anymore.
Mm-hmm. The legacy fund is getting drained.
Yep. So we're going to have to re-implement property tax on your primary residence. You're going to have to pay it. And then boom, all of a sudden on top of that, we have a cap as well.
Yep.
Right? Like they have not thought through this process as a whole. I mean, they're maybe knee-jerk reaction to what happened last
fall.
Last summer when we had the election or last fall. I don't think these are good fixes. I don't think it's the appropriate way. Again, it does nothing to fix the property tax inequity in this state, right? I mean, farmers pay little or nothing, and everybody in the city pays. Again, you can have $1 million home quarter with $1 million house on it, $500,000 in other buildings and machinery, and you pay zero property tax. If you would just take the property tax and evenly disperse it across everybody in this state, you wouldn't have a problem. You wouldn't have an issue, and you wouldn't need to do these fixes.
Exactly. I think one of the things that we've talked about most is trying to find a solution to fix the valuation process.
Right. Get rid of the assessed value. That's arbitrary, and all it does is force cities to increase values on their homes so they can collect property tax when they know the city council or whoever's running the city isn't going to allow them to just raise property tax.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a little loophole around everything.
It is. It is. And again, I mean, if I was in the cities, I would use it as well because they've allowed it to be there. It doesn't make the constituents happy.
No, but and I guess another alternative to this whole cap situation too would be cities having to raise their sales tax.
Yeah.
To try to find alternative funding sources. What if a place like Fargo had a 12% sales tax?
Well, that's what you're going to force cities to do, right? If you can only raise 3% every year, and again, I mean, we took it 870,000 would be, gradually increasing each year, but just over $4.5 million is what it gets us as a 5 year.
They allow that 5-year rollover period for it. So best case scenario, 4.5, maybe 5 million absolute most.
Yep.
And that's, what's that going to do?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, again, on
a better than I would. Yeah.
$20, $30, $40 million project, that's peanuts.
You're not doing anything.
No.
You're digging the ditch.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, we haven't seen everything come out of committee. We have seen a lot of talk about the caps and everything like that.
Because there's 50 bills they have to go through.
Hopefully they can kind of pick and choose the best pieces of them, and they start to realize as more people in the state, I hope, stand up and say, hey, we are not for caps. This is ridiculous. If we can get that, I'm happy with that. Otherwise, I'm pretty disenfranchised with our state legislature right now and what's been going on down there. I'm stunned.
On the flip side, with the new term limits, there's going to be a lot of turnover in the next 2 to 4 years.
And you're right, but I think some of what you're seeing right now, some of these guys who are in their final term and are just like, whatever, this is what I think is best.
Is that why we're seeing so many,
I think there's part of it.
Because it's a biennium, there's always a lot, but not 990.
No, it's an insane amount of bills.
That was the Minot Daily News posted that, said that in their article that they wrote about with the state legislators being here in town over the weekend. They said 990 bills had been introduced between the Senate and House. Wow. So I guess I haven't independently counted and verified it, but according to the Minot Daily, that's what they said. That's
a big number. I know each legislator can bring like 5 or 6 bills or something like that per.
There's not a cap on it. They can.
Oh, is it? I thought there was.
There's been talk about capping it, but they haven't. Like Joel Haidt, I was listening to Joel Heitkamp talk to Dustin Garillo last week on their show, and he said one year when he was in the state legislature, he presented, not even co-sponsoring, but presented almost 20 bills himself. So
Okay. And great. I mean, if we're just going to take every bill and throw it against the wall and see what sticks, I mean, maybe we could, common sense, come up with a few really good bills instead of just 990.
Especially if we're only doing this for 3 months every 2 years.
Right? Yeah. It's common sense. Common sense. 3 months every 2 years. We don't need to look at 9. I mean, because imagine the waste in time.
Exactly.
That they have to go through all of these bills.
They have 5 days a week to do it.
Yep. You could imagine what you could do if you had a number of people dedicated to just looking at really good bills and fixing this and that. But instead, all these other projects come up and these little, hey, I think this would be a good idea. You know, black-footed prairie dog annual study for $800,000 or whatever it is.
And that's the thing. Everyone wants their little piece. And
Yep.
all of a sudden, everyone getting their little piece turns from, instead of it being, 150 people that are there, it turns into everyone getting theirs. And now you have 900.
Yeah. I mean, it seems excessive to your point, and a lot of waste of time, I think, for our legislators down there. Right?
Especially for part-time citizen legislators. This isn't, everyone is taking time out of their lives to go down there for the better part of this.
So do you think that's something we ultimately have to change as a state?
I very much think so. Yeah, I think that's...
And you have to do an annual...
Either that or you have to adjust the term limits, which I don't necessarily like having to do. I would much rather see it an annual session.
Yeah. I mean, if you did an annual session 4 months a year...
And on top of that, too, here's another point. When I was looking into everything, so in the city of Minot, there were 3 new legislators that got elected this year.
Belinsky, Castaneda, and Matt Ruby.
And Christina Wolf.
And Christina Wolf, yeah.
And none of them, they all co-sponsored bills, of course, but none of them presented a piece of legislation themselves, at least as of, I guess, unless they did maybe this week, I haven't seen, but I think in the House that the date has passed to be able to do so. And so that just shows with the inexperience, you can co-sponsor bills, but not having done it before, it takes time to get rolling on the job.
And that's, again, the term limits thing, right? I mean, let's back up to that for a second. Right? And what are they, 8?
8 years.
8 years. So
Period.
You get 4 in either, and then you can jump to the other one,
Yeah,
right?
you could go to the other, go from the House to the Senate.
Again, I think that's ridiculous. Give them 12 years in one, and then you're done, right?
Sure.
Because that gives you time to learn the process, affect change, make sure it's working, and get out. Now, sometimes easier said than done, right?
For sure.
I mean, we get that.
It's the theory of it,
But I mean, again, so if you went back to the term limits and said, okay, 12 years, that allows what you're talking about, right? It allows you to learn the process, because when you get in there as a freshman legislator or a city council member or anything else, you're behind the 8 ball. There's a learning curve, and not everybody is going to pick up on it as fast as everybody else.
Exactly.
So you got to give them time. So I think you're right. I mean, we could go back. 8 years is not enough, especially if you're going to let them jump from one to the other. Just go 12 years and say, hey, whatever one you're in, you're done.
Or do the 8 and make them wait 4 to 8 years, and then they can come back for another 4 to 8 or something.
You can do something like that.
You can find a compromise here where it's less restrictive than just the period 8 blanket.
Absolutely. But again,
I guess you could
the
go
problem
from the House to Senate,
the problem with the
regardless.
term limits, though, is you get good people in there and you get bad people in there, right? And you want the bad people gone in those 8 years, but you don't necessarily want the good people gone in those 8 years, because they're the ones that are actually trying to make the difference and using the common sense and everything else.
And this circles back to what we were talking about before. Like you maybe don't want them in there when they're 90, but you want them in there to provide that experience up to some point in there.
You're telling me and just use Matt Ruby. He seems like a young guy, right? In his 30s or 40s.
Yep.
So he can serve for 8 years and then be done. Well, again, I don't know anything about Matt, but I'm going to assume he's going to learn in his freshman term here, right? And then as we go forward, he gets better and better, probably like his dad did and everything like that. And why would we, if we as Minot think it's good, and here's the thing, I'll be straight, I'm for term limits in the federal government, I'm for term limits in like governors and stuff like that, and I'm for term limits, I suppose, that once you pass 70, let's say that too,
sure,
right?
An age limit of some sort, but
when you have young legislators who are in there and they're doing well,
we don't even have 800,000 people in the state.
I mean, we
you have to have these people
how
come
many,
from somewhere.
yeah, what are we going to do? So all of a sudden, we're going to run out of people. Well, that'll never happen, but you know what I mean?
You might run out of competent people.
Well, you do. You do. I mean, take a look at Washington.
Exactly. And that's got 300 million to pick from.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, and some of the nonsense questions and stuff during these legislative sessions where they're trying to fill the cabinet. I mean,
or that's the flip side. You have people that are handpicked by the party to be their, I don't want to say puppet, but placement in.
Well, they are.
Yeah. And that's what you'd get next. It's,
Absolutely.
They go and pick, it'd be some form of nepotism, someone's kid that had been there forever, and say, hey, you're going to go to the legislature once a year, maybe, hopefully by that time. But
well, and again, I think, we're getting to the point in North Dakota where I understand why it was a biennium and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But aren't we the only state that still does that? I think we're one of the...
If we're not, there's only like one or two others that do. And I think the only ones that do are... I'm not even positive, but it would be Vermont or New Hampshire, and that's just because their gubernatorial term limits are only 2 years.
Okay.
So
yeah,
if there are more, it's not more than like 2 or 3.
Right. So we're one of the last ones doing it, let's say. Okay, whether we are the only one or one of the last few doing it, we're one of the last few doing it. Well, there's a reason people move away from it, and it may be time for us to move away from it.
We live in a day and age where connectivity is more
instant access.
Exactly. Right? You wouldn't, I mean, it's obviously you want everyone to be present, but you wouldn't theoretically have to be present in today's day and age. You can Zoom everything in.
Yeah, they did everything during COVID by Zoom.
Exactly. If you have to go for a couple days and you still have some committee meetings, why can't you just Zoom into it?
Absolutely.
Maybe you can, I don't know. But
I don't know either, I guess. But I don't know.
It feels like there's got to be a better way for it.
You would think so. I mean, at least a progression in what we do, right?
Taking that next step. Maybe we don't have to move away from the citizen legislature, but we can find a way to make them, like, I'm not for giving just raises out to them, but you have to incentivize it a little bit at that point if you make it every year.
Well, absolutely. You got to pay the people to do the job.
Exactly.
I'm not going to argue that. I mean, I don't know what they get paid right now, quite honestly.
Off the top of my head, but
I've never looked. But again, whether it's annual, whatever it is, you just got to pay them. And if it means you got to increase that a little bit because they got to come every year, so be it.
Mm-hmm. And you could cut down on 900 bills a year then.
Oh, you would think. I mean, gosh.
You can make it a little bit more manageable.
Again, doesn't that just seem like shotgun blast? We're going to see what sticks.
Happens. Yeah. Everyone that's in their last session is like, here's everything I kind of want to get done.
If there's a website out there where we could pull up the most ludicrous bills going through the North Dakota legislature right now and see, like, so, I mean, wouldn't that be a great podcast to do? Fun. Hey, listen to this list of bills that are going through.
Exactly. Oh. No, that would be fun. I will have to go and look and compare this to the last couple bienniums to see how many bills were presented. I will. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see.
It just, I can't guarantee it. Maybe this isn't outrageous, but 900 seems just too many.
Well,
for North Dakota?
There's 100 senators, and right around 100.
There's 90. I think it's 94 and 47. I want to say. Is there 47 districts or 49 districts in the state?
47, 49, whatever it is. So, okay.
You have right around 150 collectively.
Yeah, 150, somewhere between 100 and 150 collective legislative members, right? House and Senate. So you're telling me that every single one of them threw roughly 6 bills out there? Isn't this North Dakota, small government, conservative? Well, let's go back to your point, though. The 4 or 5 new legislators from Minot, they didn't throw out any.
Like, obviously, they co-sponsored a ton, but they didn't present any.
Correct. They didn't present any. I mean, if you take those freshman legislators off of that table, that means that the guys that have been in there are now throwing 12 to 15 bills.
Exactly.
Every year.
And now it just adds up.
It does. It just never ends.
No.
I'd like to read a lot of them. I mean, I haven't. I've been going through more of them than I ever have before this year.
Yeah,
but I didn't even realize there was 900. No wonder I can't get through all of them.
Exactly. I thought there was 500 some. And again, I haven't independently verified it, but according to that Minot Daily News article from last Saturday, like 900 some. It was 990 or 960 had been presented.
Well, that's probably legit. So
yeah, I don't doubt
that's crazy, man. What else you got? Anything city, local?
I think we tied a lot of it in with the state stuff.
Yeah,
unless there's anything big you want to talk about, or
I haven't even seen the agenda for next Monday night's city council meeting yet. So
it's coming up. It's on Monday.
It is Monday night. We have one. They usually come out Thursday afternoon at about 4. So
we'll be seeing it today then.
Should be. I know there's, there was some stuff. I don't know if you saw that news article the other night on KX it was KX, I'm pretty sure, about the pound.
Oh, I don't believe so, but I know the pound is that transition is happening now.
Well, right? That transition started on the 1st, but there was a thing that came out, and it said the Souris Valley Animal Shelter will not take animals submitted to them by any resident in the city of Minot. You have to go through the Minot Police Department. There has to be a report written, and then they'll take the animal. Which we were all like, hold on a second. That means that the city's going to end up having to pay for everybody's animals, and so there was a little bit of consternation behind the scenes.
It sounds a little.
I think it's been determined that will not happen. We spoke with Scott Samuelson spoke with Captain Plessis, and he said, no, that's not what we're going to do. I don't know why that said that type on that article. We will give them advice. We will tell them what they could do or where they could do, but we're not going to write a report, take their animal, and submit it so the city has to pay for it.
That's fair. That doesn't sound like it.
Well, no, but I mean, some of that stuff you see it pop up on the news, and you're like,
huh?
What?
Well, yeah. KX had another article from last week. I don't know. We talked about it last Thursday.
Which one?
They talked about your guys' letter, and
they
didn't even mention the part where you sent the letter.
Right.
They just it's like they forgot.
Just say, hey, we're opposed to the cap.
Yeah.
Right.
They forgot to watch the end of the meeting. I don't know what happened.
Well, I think people left a little bit early because.
I did.
Well, I mean, yeah, because I mean. We got done talking about it. We went on to some other stuff, and then it came back up.
It was the Macadec, like their big presentation, and it took like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's a great thing, but at
8:30, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it was, I forget what time. But I mean, I understand why the news media would get up and leave, right?
And of course, the one time I do, you guys.
I don't think you were alone.
I wasn't. That's the thing. That's why I don't feel awful. But it's. Of course.
Well, it is what it is. But I mean, the fact that it came up later shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, again, it's something that I think every city in the state needs to do. We need to tell the state, hey, we don't need caps. We're handling our business. You handle your business.
And if you're going to cap it, you can't cap it at 3%.
Well, I don't know how you do that.
I agree. I agree. But I know, I think, was it Grand Forks said that he's not outright opposed to caps, but where it's at now is too low kind of thing.
Well, again, I don't know what those cities have collected in property tax, but if you just take our number, $870,000 a year, okay?
Even if you do that at $1 million a year, that's, I mean, you're not.
What can you do for $1 million?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, maybe hire a couple
consultants.
Well, oh, jeez. Yes, that would probably be somebody's idea. But no, you could hire a couple firefighters and a couple police officers. I mean, take a look at how shorthanded we are in the police department, right? I mean, and granted, that money's already built into the budget, but as we grow as a city and as a department, those numbers may increase. Well, if we can only raise $1 million a year using your number, and we have all these different things, because here's the things that property tax pay for: the cemetery, the library, first responders and public service and all that stuff, right? The library is going to continue to need more funding over the years. Yep. The cemetery, same thing. So let's say that $1 million translates as you increase things. There's only $600,000 left, right? Or only $400,000.
Just with the natural flow of inflation.
Yeah. I mean, that's how things work. And so for that cap to be in place is absolutely absurd. So
I agree.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think I'm all set. I had fun.
I did too. I think that was a very good first time you and I working together on the podcast.
I think it flowed well.
I do too. I think it was great. So, well, that's it for the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We'll see you next week. And if you got any questions or you need anything, let us know.